Ever wondered how to use 2D lists within Python? Well, stick around, because today I'm going to show you. I'm Mr. Crook, and welcome to Programming Mr. Crook, where we make Python programming simple for beginners. By the end of this video, we're going to be looking at 2D arrays or 2D lists. We're going to know how to create them, access elements, modify elements, and also loop through them. Well, before we start this, we're just going to do a recap of what we looked at in the last lesson. This is where we created a list. This is just a way to organize different data under one identifier. What we looked at in the last lesson was creating a list with these square brackets, and we would separate our data using commas here. And what we could do is we could print out each item. We could also access each one using an index value with a square bracket. And I also showed you how to loop through it as well. First up, we are going to just create a 2D list, and I'm going to show you how it works. So I'm just going to say my 2D list. And just like a 1D list, it uses these square brackets. Now, a 2D list, you can kind of think of using like rows and columns. So I'm going to hit enter here, and I'm going to start creating my first row here. I'm just going to do the numbers 1, 2, and 3. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use a comma to separate this list. And I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to move down one line, and I'm going to enter some data into another list. I'm just going to do 4, 5, 6. I'm going to use a comma. I'm going to create my third list within here as well. And I'm just going to go 7, 8, 9. So I'm just going to talk about the structure we've got. So we've created our list here. And in here, we've got some separate elements which it makes up our 2D list. Now, if I was just to print this out, I'm just going to say my 2D list. So I'm just going to press run. And down here, we'll see the output from this. Now, this might not make too much sense at the moment. Now, like we had in the previous lesson, we can also use some index values. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to press enter position 0 here. And what this is going to do is just going to output this whole list. Now, at the moment, what I'm doing is it's seeing this list that's inside of my 2D list as an element. So this is position 0, this would be position 1, and this is position 2. And just to show you that that works, I'm going to go for position 2. Now, what I can also do is I can access an individual element from here as well. And it works the same way with 0 indexing. So I can go 0, 1, 2. So I'm just going to print my 2D list, and I'm going to give it the value 2. And what that's going to do is it's going to go through here. It's going to go 0, 1, 2. And then within here, once it's found the second element, it's then going to find the second element of here. So 0, 1, 2, and it's going to output this. Now, I'm going to try and output the number 2. So just have a think about how we could access the number 2 here. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to access the 0 list that I've got here that's in position 0. And because I want to access the second item, that will go 0, 1, I'm going to change this to be equal to 1. Now, it's a little bit different to how you might have learned graphs and things like that in maybe maths or geography, where we go along the stairs, along the corridor, up the stairs. In this case, 0, 0 will start here, and then 0, 1 would be the next one, 0, 2, and then it starts going down like that. So sometimes that can be a little bit tricky. I've shown you how to access an element. We can also use this same technique to modify an element. So let's say, for example, I want to update a couple of values. I don't want position 0, 0 to equal 1 anymore. I can say my 2D list. I'm going to give it the value. I'm going to say 0 and 0. And I'm going to assign that the value. Let's go for 99 now. And when I print out my 2D list, we should see that 99 is in that position, which we've got just here. Now, I don't really like the way that this is displaying at the moment, so I'm going to show you a couple of ways that I can use iteration to display the elements which I've got here. Easiest way in Python is by using a for loop, and I can say for item, actually let's say for row in my 2D list. We could print out each row. and we've got that being printed out. I'm also just going to change a few more of these values just so we can see that this is taking place. I'm going to now change the value in 22, which originally stores the value 9, and I'm going to say 300. I'm going to run this, and I'm also going to change the value that's in position 5, and let's set that to be equal to, so that will be position 11. Let's go for 999, something like that, just to see that we are accessing these elements as we want. Excellent, that seems to be working. Now, the way that I've looped through this is using iteration is quite a basic way. I'm going to show you another way that I can also loop through it by using these two coordinate values which I've got here. So I'm going to get rid of this. What I'm going to say is for I in range. So this would be useful if maybe my array has different size lists within it, or my 2D list has different size lists within it. So I'm going to say for I in range, and the value I'm going to give it is len, and I'm going to say my 2D list. This is going to count every element that we've got in here, so every row that we've just seen. Now what I can also do is I can use a nested loop within here, and I'm going to say for j in range, and I'm going to use len, and I'm going to say my 2D list. I'm just going to pass in the value of I. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to print out the value which I've got stored there. So I'm going to say my 2D list, and I'm going to give it the value of I, and I'm also going to give it the value of j now. So if I run this, we're going to get every value being printed out in a certain way as it goes through. So it starts with item, well, we've got that one, which is kind of throwing off what we've got. So 99 is coming out first, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 999, 6, 7, 8, and 3. Now something else which I can also do is I can use this method to find out the max value which I've got here. So by default, I'm going to set my max value to be equal to the very, very first position within my 2D array, or my 2D list, sorry. Sometimes I'm saying array or list, sometimes these are used interchangeably. Arrays are a data structure in computer science. When we say a list, it's basically Python implementing an array for this. So what I'm going to say is that the very, very first position that I have is going to be my maximum value. I'm also going to store the max position as well. And I'm just going to say that that's going to be equal to 0, 0. Now, what I'm going to do, rather than print out each one, I'm going to use an if statement to check the value which I've got here. So I'm going to say, if that position as we go through it, so start with 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, and then 1, 0, and so on. If that value that we've got there is greater than our max value, what I want to do is update my max value to be equal to the value that is stored in my 2D list, which is just here. The other thing I'm also going to do is store my max position, and that is going to be equal to whatever the value in I and j are. So these are just our iterative loops, and they're the variable count as it goes through. Once I get to the end, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say print, and let's just print out what the max value is. And let's also just print out the position. So I've just got a variable called max position, which is going to output that. Now I think 999, which is in position 1, 1, is going to be my biggest value. Let's try that here. And down here, we've got 999 being printed out, and we've got that there. I'm going to add some more values into this. Let's add a fourth row in. Let's do like 1000, 2, and 72. Let's see if it picks up 1000 being the largest number. So that will be in 0, 1, 2, 3, and then it should be in the 0 position of row 3. I'm going to run this through, and it's given us that value as being the largest, so this does seem to be working. Now, sometimes students get a little bit confused with 2D lists. I always think about this as being like a bookshelf. So you start at the very top of your bookshelf. This is your first shelf, This will be your second shelf, third shelf, and then within here you can think about these being individual books on each shelf as it goes through. So what we've done is we've looked at 2D lists, we've learned how to access them, how we can also modify elements within there, and also how we can leap through them. So what I'd recommend you guys do is maybe try creating your own 2D lists within Python. Share what you've learned in the comments. Now, if you want a bit of a challenge, you could maybe create a tic-tac-toe game or a noughts and crosses game where you use a 2D list to store the moves. So if you found this video useful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. I'm also just going to show you my TES page as well, where I've got a load of Python resources on here that you can check out. I'll put the link in the description, so feel free to have a look, and if you find them useful, please download them. There's some free stuff on here, there's also some paid stuff. Please take a look.